Prime hunting bows.
Hey, this is like AOL.
Like
You got mail.
Yeah, right.
Get you up to speed. We're gonna have to hang Dave's old bow on the wall.
Yeah, right. She's all bubble wrapped up. Already super freaking light. Wow.
Which one did you get, the Rowan?
The Rowan, yeah. That thing is sweet.
Ooh,
Weighs like nothing.
let's see.
That thing is wicked. I want to get it set up. I want to shoot.
All right.
That's awesome.
How's the weight on it?
It's good.
Cool. You're gonna be a deer killing machine.
Thank you. That's awesome. I can't wait. Oh man. Set it up.
All right. A lot of guys online have been talking about how public land's ruined. You know, if a YouTuber talks about a spot, that's it. That's the end of the world. That spot's done. If somebody puts trail cameras out there, uh-oh, end of the world. Public land's done because there's trail cameras all over the place. Or if somebody's going to get drones, oh no, public land's done. They have drones. You know, a lot of those things do make it harder. But they in no way, shape, or form kill it for a guy who knows what he's doing. There's a lot of guys out there who have been using the beast method, and it's spread through YouTube channels, it's spread through all kinds of stuff, and all of a sudden it's kind of widespread knowledge. There's a lot of guys out there doing it. But there's still very, very few that really got it in them. They got that killer ability in them. Most of these guys are getting a little better bucks, but they're still not killing the giants on a regular basis. And what I am seeing is that these properties that are getting a lot of pressure from these types of people, those people are not shooting as many little bucks because now those cameras and stuff are giving them confidence. Now they know there's big bucks there, and they hold out a little more, and they don't shoot as many little tiny bucks. In today's age, there's also buck shaming. You go online and everybody's shooting big bucks, and you don't want to show up with this. So now I'm starting to see more and more mature bucks on public land, which kind of goes against the grain of what everybody's saying, how public land is ruined. But I am also seeing a lot more pressure. I'm seeing a lot more trail cameras, a lot more setups in good spots. And a lot of the time, me too, I get to a spot, I navigate to a spot on a map, and there's a cell cam, there's a tree stand, and it can suck for the day. But what you got to realize is that those people are advertising where they're at. Those people are advertising to the deer where they're at. They're advertising to me and you where they're at. And where I come from, that makes hunting a little easier, because the deer are going to move to spots where those people aren't. And I'm going to move to spots where those people aren't. And two worlds are going to collide. Pressure makes hunting easier if you know what you're doing as a big buck hunter. Now, where pressure hurts is if they kill everything on the property. If there are no big bucks. Yeah, and you make a point. And cameras could get out of hand. They have in some places, and they're starting to in others. But, as of right now, for the majority of the spots I go to, seeing cell cams, seeing tree stands helps me. It makes me focus on where those people aren't, and it teaches me to learn what those people are looking for. You have to get a little more better at finding those subtle spots where they're at. Not the shiny point, not the big island. Sometimes those are the case. You know, you get away from where people hunt beast style, and those are still great spots. But a lot of times, it's hunting the area down and finding that 10% of the property where nobody is bothering it, whether there's sign or not. If it has the features those mature bucks need, they'll move in there and they'll live there. And that's what you got to look for. It really ain't about finding 10 spots where there's bedding areas on pristine points and thinking you're a beast, because you're probably not. You probably got to open up your eyes and look more at the terrain and more where these bucks are living and how they're hiding and how they're hunting around people. That's a big part of beast equation. If you're going to hunt on level, equal playing field with everybody else, you need to be able to put hunters into the equation on how you set up, not just land features. If you want to put all other hunters out of your area, that's just greed on you. Figure out how to hunt around them. And you'll still kill giant bucks if you were killing them in the first place. That's a good one. Scouting another piece of public property. I've only been on this property a couple times, turkey hunting, and once probably about 25 years ago I scouted this property for deer, but it's really different from when it was then. It was just all grass, and there was some trees and swamp in the back. Now the trees have kind of grown in. The swamp in the back looks really good, but I never really hunted it, but I remember it looking good when I scouted it, and I never came back and hunted it other than turkeys. And I've only been on this property once or twice turkey hunting, and just one little spot. It's a small property, but every time I come out here, I'm overwhelmed by the amount of deer sign here. Right now, I'm taking what used to be grass, and now small trees. Like, this is about as big as they are right where I'm at. I'm taking it down to where the swamp is to see what the deer activity looks like down there. Everything in here is browse, and there's a lot of different kinds of food types and plants. But there's deer in here right now, real heavy. I'm just seeing tracks everywhere, and some big tracks, and beds everywhere. Like this bed here. I mean, I must have seen 7 or 8 beds in the 100 yards I've walked from my truck now. This is an area, this isn't the direction that people normally go. There's a trail, a hiking trail that pulls them another way. And so they don't normally walk over here. But, you know, you look around and this looks pretty thick. Come hunting season, this is nothing for cover. This is wide open. And even like a deer bed in here, I mean, you're bedding kind of in the sun. So, I mean, might be a night bed, or, you know, they might be coming up here feeding on these plants. Like, all these plants are browsed and then laying down to chew their cud. That doesn't even look like it was bedded in very long. And it's got no kind of cover around it. No other beds like it's a doe group. It's just a stupid spot, basically. So they're more likely to bed in those stupid spots when they're night bedding, when they're laying down just to chew their cud. So I'm going to ignore all this, and I'm going to go straight to the terrain that should hold bucks. You're going to find beds everywhere, but you're not going to find big bucks everywhere. So you got to make sure you're looking at the beds that are on land type features, on the transitions, on the points, you know, the things we talk about. That the beds are right there, and hopefully there's some sign, just at least a little bit, telling you it's a big buck. But don't lose focus by looking at the beds everywhere. It doesn't matter if there's beds out in the grass. It doesn't matter if there's beds over here or over there in places where people move around. Find them in isolated areas where people aren't going, on features that'll hold mature bucks. But I did see when I was turkey hunting this year some good bedding. I was jumping deer constantly, and one of the deer looked like a good buck. So we'll get over to that too, but we'll make our way through this property and see what we find. Old rub, heavy trail right through here. Now I'm starting to show on the map that right down in there is where the swamp is, where that willow tree is. That's where the lower terrain gets. And it looks like it does come onto the public quite a bit. So we're going to swing around this side of that swamp, see what we see. I mean, these trails are interesting, but obviously this to me is probably going to be night movement. unless it's going into the bedding. But yeah, that's swamp down here. So, we get a little more swamp terrain than what I thought. That actually looks like it probably holds some deer on that edges. Like in that brush there, that brush there, over in there. Any little points coming out? There's a little bowl right there where that tree line hits this tree line of swamp. You know, and I'm sure there's water right in here in this low spot. That's why there's no trees there and just a little bit of dogwood patches. So I'm gonna say some of this stuff has probably got some bedding in it. We should look at that and then look at how to hunt it. Yeah, here's the water already. You can see where deer have been recently walking through here. See that? Oh, it's all knocked down. The way this works out, looking at this is surrounded by farms, and the farms got heavy hunting on them, and they're managing for big bucks. Some of them you can tell from the road. I mean, they got tower blinds, they got food plots. You know, you zoom in, you can see that stuff. They got their land posted real heavily, telling you they're big hunters. Well, those deer are not getting to 5 or 6 years old on their property. I guarantee you, down in this little swampy area here, gets way less pressure than they're getting on their managed farms. And those deer they're getting in the middle of the night on camera are probably coming out of here. So I've seen enough sign to know that there's some big bucks that go through this property. Now I just gotta find where they live when they're on this property. Ooh, almost over the boots again. Still seeing lots of deer trails coming through this stuff, and they're coming out of that stuff that I thought was bedding right there. There's a whole little pocket here. I don't think I've ever been in this portion right here. Yeah, look at all these fresh knocked down deer trails. You know, you look at this area here, and this grass goes quite a ways. If a guy had the wind right, and he can get the right tree, they can see all this, where it's not going to be too much where the deer move. With a good set of binoculars, this would be a really good spot to observe. I almost think like over there, that wouldn't touch any of these deer trails that are going over here, and you could literally see right down this whole stretch. You just have to have the wind right. And that tree right there, we can mark that as an observation stand. Wouldn't work today because the wind's blowing like this, but this is actually an odd wind. A west wind would blow perfect for that tree. That'd be a good observation tree. Right there. That's actually up over towards where people walk and stuff, up into the high ground. I don't think that'd do any damage at all. A lot of people say you can't observe swamps. Well, a lot of times you can't. But if you're open-minded, you can find opportunities where you can. That'd be a good spot to sit one day, late July, early August, just get a glimpse of what's living in here, because that's when those deer are really active in daylight. Okay, I'm in that willow brush, and this is pretty flooded in here, but this is a bed right here. You see where there's no grass growing? But the water's real deep right now. You know, come fall, there won't even be any water in here, or it'll be very little. The center areas will have water. This won't. See if there's any rubs in here. I don't see none. There's another spot here. There's no difference in the height of the ground. And there's no difference in the types of dirt. Why does this spot not have vegetation and everything else does? It's because something's been laying there. You just can't lay here right now because right now there's a lot of flooding going on. And this heat too, I would imagine as the leaves aren't fully developed, they're going to get more into that tree cover. Right now, and get a little shade. Come fall, I bet you this is full of deer. Now when I come up out of the swamp, I get just onto the high ground. Here's a pretty heavy trail. It's not being used much right now, as you can see, but it parallels all this bedding. And I'm willing to bet these deer, when they get up, if they go to the crops that are over there, they start heading out this way. This probably wouldn't be a bad area right in here for a setup, because the bedding ends like right there. So yeah, here more trails come in from over there, right here. Now you get a lot more fresh sign too. There's fresh tracks on this. But right here would be a good area. Well, there's an old rub, another historical there. But you just get a feel for what's going on here. We got bedding right there at 40 yards. And then from there up for hundreds and hundreds of yards, it's all bedding, one after another. So starting here would not be a bad idea. Figuring out how you're gonna hunt out of this stuff when it's all choked with buckthorn is another story. But this looks like a good area. I think maybe a tree like that one over there, you could probably hit this. Yeah, look at that tree there all by itself. I think that could work. Let's take a look at that. So you have to be able to hit into here, which is a buckthorn jungle, but yeah, you're gonna be able to pick an arrow through there, especially if you get nice and high up there. Just get right into there. And anything that goes through here, you got a shot at. Get your wind casting back to the west. Any westerly wind would work. Yeah, there's even more trails coming through here. So, but all kind of coming from that bedding, it looks like to me. But a tree stand right there would give you a good shot. Yeah, just no shot would be over 20 yards. This is pretty good. Yeah, I like this. We'll mark this tree and then we'll just keep moving. And then while we're going, we can check the bedding and stuff. If I saw something I really didn't like a giant chain on stand right over here 40 yards up, I'd just delete that mark. Right over here, just out of sight, is a giant pond. And everything back here is funneled through right here. And all the bedding along here is going to be forced through this position. And the crops are right back there. So they can't go too much over that way, or they just go into open grass right up by the hiking trails where the people hang out. And if they come this way, this is the only way through. So this is really a good spot. And I don't see any sign of anybody ever setting up in here. Okay, I kept going down the trail and it really got to be thick with buckthorn. But the trail kept coming down here and then every now and then spidering into the little bedding points along the edge. But when I got to this spot, I noticed the skylight over there and the swamp skylight over here. It seems like there's a point going out. So I studied the Spartan Forge app, and I can see that there's over here there's no big trees. It's low wet marsh like over there, but more brush like dogwood and stuff, which will hold more bedding. And that this woods goes down into a long point here, which I'm assuming is going to have some of the better bedding on it. And looking around, the main trail comes out here, but there's more trails that come out over here and over here and over here, and everything kind of filters into here. And some of it goes up to the last spot we set up, and some of it goes this way, which goes around that big pond that's back here and through another funnel. I broke my own rule. I almost always go to the bedding and scout my way out when I'm scouting. And there's a damn good reason I do that. Because as you're scouting your way in, you're gonna find good setups. But you don't know if that setup is the best spot until you go further and further and further. And when you scout back, you hit the first good setup from the bedding, before all the trails start breaking off, before the deer start getting more nocturnal, you want to go from the bedding out. But I broke that rule in this video because the only way to get to the bedding was to go down this trail. And I saw how I could end up setting up in spots that look great too far back. And there was some good in this too, by finding those setups. And the reason I'm showing it is because when I go into a new hunting spot, like out of state, or I found out about some big buck or something, and I go in there and I scout my way in, I got to pick the right spot. So it kind of, you know, teaches you when you go in backwards once or twice that, yeah, you know, if I would have came in hunting, I may have been too far back, or I may have seen the lesser animals and not the giant that I want that's further up. So sometimes you got to push those envelopes when hunting, and you can kind of get taught that from your scouting. There's a lot more you learn than just where a bed is. I kind of like the idea of coming straight to this spot and maybe not even hunting that one, because what happens when you stage hunt like that, if you're too close, I hunt that spot, nobody's been hunting back in here. You can see there's no setups. All the setups are in the more open terrain, drier stuff on this property. And if I set up there and hunt there, and then the next day I move to here, or the next time I hunt I move to here, that's the equivalent of when I hunt back there, slapping that buck on the ass and saying, I'm coming for you. He's going to get real nocturnal, he's going to get real sly, and he's going to watch what he's doing. I want to catch him by complete surprise. If it's a mature deer I'm after, I go straight to this big tree here, and the back of that tree is big enough to hide me. So I could be on this side of the tree, using that tree as my background. And I can hit these trails over here, I can hit this trail here, I can hit these trails here, I can hit the trail over there. I can even hit down into the swamp, and I can even see a big portion of the swamp with binoculars. And looking from up there, I think I might even be able to, depending on leaf cover, see into that swamp over there. But anything that comes up this point is going to go right past that tree. I haven't seen any big rubs down here, not even historical. But I did all the way around this, and there just really isn't rub trees in here. In my defense of my rather amateur setups that I'm showing, you know, as you go through this buckthorn, it is thick as a jungle, and there's only so many openings. And at the same time, I'm going by little bedding points that could hold big bucks as I'm getting further in. And I'm thinking, I'm pushing it. In a lot of cases, on a blind hunt, I would have set up in these spots and never moved forward and never known. Most guys who share hunts on YouTube hide their mistakes. But I'm showing my mistakes and showing the errors in what I do, because I think if I'm making that mistake, you're probably making that mistake too. Raise your hand if you're making that mistake. What I learned from it, you can learn from it and not have to make as many mistakes. So now let's get down to the end of the point where the best beds are. Right here, I'm walking on the trail, and there's deer tracks right there. You see the tracks? There's a beaten trail in here if I move these branches, and you see tracks on it all the way down. But this is what that buckthorn and briars does. These invasives, they just kind of just take this stuff over. Deer are still going through it. Since I make my way down the point, this trail is really just starting to bust open. I mean, everything's coming together hard on this trail, and this trail is really starting to get used quite a bit. And the point is narrowing down. It might end up that a setup has to be down more towards the tip. So I'm getting in a ways now. Well, there's a good track right there. Ooh, it's amazing that there's no setups in here. To me, this is super obvious. The only sign I see is deer sign. I don't even see soda cans or beer cans. Hey, there's a historical rub right there. Nice one. Looks like there's scarring way over in that tree on the end from it. You just have to have the right types of trees, and then they rub. Yeah, lots of deer tracks. Wow. Tracks really haven't seemed to spider in and out of the swamp yet. Lots of fresh tracks, but it's kind of coming to a point up here. This is pretty heavy, and lots of fresh tracks on here. I mean, just since the last rain, which was just about 48 hours ago, it looks like 20 deer have gone down this trail. Now you can start to see some spidering as we're getting towards the point. That's getting into some pretty deep water that's there year round, and pockets of brush in that water to bed in. Real good bedding on this side. This whole point is surrounded by good bedding according to the map. You know, if you look at this point comes down here, tapers down into there, and then there's a little T point coming off this way, and there's a bowl of what looks to be good bedding over here, and then it just empties into like the water like that, where there's no bedding all the way back there, and all these deer are still going back. So I really think that this is probably a better spot. Not much for trees in here, but look at this trail. You know, we got some spidering trails coming in and out of here, but it's all coming from this point back into here, and this is where it starts to condense. But look at this trail, it's just pounded. As the point came to an end, it was completely surrounded by fairly deep water. So I knew those heavy trails coming out of that point were coming from bedding that was close by. There's another trail's coming through here, there's trails going through there. This looks pretty good. If we get the right wind for it, I think that tree, that elm tree right there, would be okay. It'd definitely be when there's leaf cover, because once that leaf cover is gone, you ain't sitting here. This looks pretty good if a guy could get up into here and just hide where this crotch is, right there. I don't know if you can see that. Right there where that crotch is. You could just kind of blend in up there. And you have a shot to this trail here into that opening. You'd have that trail there. The shots would be like 10 or 15 yards, but this could be pretty good. Nice trail going through here. Another one going through there. There's the tree. That main trail goes right along the swamp there, coming out of this. This comes around from the swamp over here. There's just pounded tracks on it. And there's a pretty good cross trail right here. Going through here too. That trail is just beat though. And everything comes within range of that tree. The only trouble is the stuff coming from this way kind of comes in. If it goes that way, we're good. If it goes that way, it's gonna come straight on. I have to wait for it to give me a shot, which is hard because I'm gonna be low. He's gonna be staring at me. But probably give me a shot if I'm patient. Most likely they come out over there anyways. But this is what you like. You follow them points down, and right where all the trails spider, that's what I would call staging. That's when you're getting really close to the bedding. Without seeing the bedding underneath these lone trees in the swamp and the points and fingers and stuff coming off of this end of this point, I can just figure that if we went in there, we'd just find bedding all the way around the point. Some would come in like this, some would come in like that, but it'll all meet right here and then take these trails towards the crops. That's my spot right there. The good part is a nice west wind. This trail here coming out is just unbelievable with tracks. And there's the tree from this point of view, right up there. And here's another rub. There's a low one and a high one on this tree. I can see some more historical too. So signs picking up when we get in here close. And this is the kind of bedding that if there's a big buck in here, he's bedding down here. Up on the field edge, turkey hunting, there was some big buck sign up there. And I saw a pretty good wounded animal. But obviously during turkey season, he didn't have much of a rack yet. Wow, it's like a cattle trail. And I haven't hit one soda can, one wrapper, one cell cam, Wasn't trail camera, wasn't tree stand set up, nothing. And this trail is just pounded. Literally pounded. And that other trail comes out of this bowl right here. I'm about 40 or 50 yards from the tree I just set up, and I ran into this apple tree right here. That's interesting. I mean, this stuff, all this stuff used to be farms at one point in time that was bought up for DNR land, but this is the point, and that swamp wraps around, and it looks like the bedding's going to be off on this side, which is probably why that one trail comes in from that stuff. That's the thick bowl. But I wouldn't doubt it if there's some bedding right off of this point. I can see from the distance some historical rubs in here. And yeah, I can see a bed right here. Look at this. Right here on the point, there's a bed worn right to the dirt. Yeah, look, there's hairs right in it here too. It looks like a big bodied deer was laying there. Yeah, a lot of hair right there. Here's a pretty big track right here, pretty big front track. Look how thick the toes are. Rounded tip toes. And that's a big bed from end to end. That's a big bed. Bedded there the last couple of days. It's not today fresh, but probably 2 days old. Yeah, okay. So this is maybe 50 yards from my tree. I'm liking this a little bit here. So he's got this little cave here. Probably just bust right through there if you walk down this point. You can see everything around that bed is browsed. Look at that. You might bed in here year-round because these beds are being used now, the trails are being used now, and you can tell they're being used in the fall. And there ain't a lot here. I mean, there's not a lot of terrain here for these bucks, but there's a lot of good farmland around and not any pressure in here, so I'd have to think this is holding some good bucks. I mean, there's trails everywhere you look in here. They're all just beat. I'd imagine if they're bedding and living in here, they're probably walking around in this all day long eating, which is why this is eaten down and not as thick as it was back there. More historical rubs here. Historical rub there, historical rub there. This bedding point had water all the way around it, some of it fairly deep. And the only accesses you get in the shallower water had really, really thick brush. So it kind of kept the people out of here. But this point was pronounced, could be seen on a map. And you never really know if there's some real good beast hunter that's getting in there or not, or if even some general person is getting in there. You have to go in and look. You never know. That's why you have to scout, so you don't get those surprises, walk in there and find trail cameras and tree stands and flagging tape. Not to say that might happen in the future, but it's a lot less likely if you scout it beforehand and figure out the exact tree you need to be in. I was a little surprised not to see any setups back here. It's kind of a funnel of trees that connects one swamp to another swamp. This would probably be a good rut funnel. But yet I really don't see where anybody's set up in here. Though they could have without you knowing it. I don't think too many people are hunting this stuff down in here. I'm really not seeing any sign. There's a balloon. There's a bed right on the crest of this hill, 10 feet from the balloon. That's a pretty worn out bed there. Oh, look, it's got old rub marks on the tree too. And behind it, a lot of historical rubs, right? Oh, that one's from last year, but it's a small buck. But all them big rubs, I was just looking at are right over there. And you got this bed right here, and that's worn out. That was used quite a bit for a while. There's still hair in it. So that little funnel of trees there that connects the two swamps, it's kind of interesting because there are several real big beds in there with big buck sign, and both ends are rubbed up pretty heavy. I mean, this is a fresh rub here with historical ones on it too. Historical ones there. This is the other side of it. Very interesting. Could be worth throwing a camera to see if there's daylight movement here. I mean, I jumped a buck, or at least I think a buck, out of this buckthorn right here. I didn't go in it to look at the bed, but it crashed out of there and went down through the swamp. I could hear it splashing, but I couldn't get around fast enough to see it. Based on the number of rubs in the beds and no hunter sign, and it ain't really that far from bedding, this might not be a bad spot for a rut hunt, right here. What I got is, I got that swamp that we're looking at where we set up. We set up on the far side of it, then walked through it, looking at the bedding. We got to this corner of it, and there's a tree line that goes along the edge of an open, grassy, brushy area. And then it comes over here and it connects back into swampy woods where they'd bed. For whatever reason, nobody seems to be hunting, and it's a funnel in between. I'm not much for rut funnels, but if they're short and they connect bedding and there's no pressure there, I could see it working. Especially if we're jumping deer in here. We jumped one, ran into a couple fresh beds. I mean, and those beds look like they've been used all fall. So, open grassy area, tree line, open grassy area, swamp, swamp. And this funnel goes through here like this, and this little old tree line here from when this used to be a farm has plenty of big trees in here to set up in. So I mean, you can just see these giant rubs in here all over the place. Coming through on a trail here, and a trail along the bottom. And down against the swamp is that nice tree there. There's a natural opening to all these trails, and to right here where all the rubbing activity is taking place is only 20 yards. I think that is a good tree for downwind, or a wind going that way like it is right now, and you get that thermal pull towards that stagnant swamp water. That's a good spot. I'm not too sure why, but these beds are all along this ridge, and so is the rubs. So I think that setup factor is a pretty good one. Just wonder if you're better off on that end or that end. I would have to think they're moving that way. Coming through here too, I could see several sets of running tracks. So I kicked deer out of some of these beds somewhere in there. And I even heard a couple of deer run. Heard one dive in the water and swim. Without those beds, I wouldn't even really look at this area that closely, because it's not where I'd expect deer. I would think that these rubs that I'm seeing, historical and the fresh ones, would be from, you know, nighttime, but those are definitely buck beds, and they're pretty well used. I guess the big part of it is people just don't come back this far. That rub there, it's a high one. And this is rub 2. That's pretty big there. Both sides. Here's a semi-fresh one from last year. There's a real high historical one. This is just ripped up. And here's a little bedding area here. Here's a bed here, bed there, bed right there. Getting into this little canopy of cover where it's a little darker and cooler. You can see her laying here too. You can see some hair there. Yeah, there's a bed right there too. Look at that. Now this isn't really what I would expect to be really good buck cover, but the sign don't lie. And I think people are hunting what looks like, you know, normal woods and field edges and stuff like that, like they see on, you know, Buckmasters TV. And the bucks are probably just adjusting to them. So I mean, they don't have to be where you expect them. You got to go and you got to find them and then hunt them where they're at. And I mean, just looking around in here, I can see more beds over there, one there, one there. This area has a whole bunch of beds, a whole bunch of big buck sign. Now granted, some of it ain't fresh, but if there's a big buck in the area, this is where he's going to be bedding according to the sign. There is some big buck sign where this comes out at the fields. They might just not be rubbing in here all the time. This is interesting. They don't always do what you expect. They're probably adapting to what people do, how people hunt this. It's a pretty worn out bed right here. I scouted that funnel until it led into a nice swamp that probably has good bedding on private. And then I turned and followed a hardwood ridge that was fairly open and had really nice trees in it and had easier walking access to it, where I expected there to be some hunter sign because of those nice, easy to climb, easy to hunt trees on an obvious ridge. The woods just suddenly opened up in the middle here to an oasis where there's no buckthorn. And man, is there the deer trails coming into here with fresh sign on them. Yeah, this is real fresh stuff. There's a big track there, but lots of historical rubs and lots of tracks. But you have more hunter sign in here. I didn't have any on the other end. Now granted, this is old, but it's hunter sign. There was none back there. Now I'm getting closer to where everybody goes in at. There's more sign there. And these, yeah, look at this. And these are the kind of trees somebody could hunt out of. Oh, that's a big track right there. I don't know how well you can see that. It's as big as my whole hand. Here's one toe. Here's the other toe. I put my whole hand in there. It's a big track and a long track. There's a lot of rubbing in this section, but this has the trees for the rubbing, which would attract people's attention too, because this is the type of spots where people hunt. The woods leading into the crops. This is a fresh rub from last year, and this is really high. That's up at my waist. That's a good buck. Does this look like your spot where you hunt? Looks like a great spot for night pictures and night activity. Good spot for hunters and slobs. Look at that historical. I keep finding that really big track. You know, you see a few huge rubs, and you see a lot of sign, a lot of heavy trails. This stuff in here holds that kind of sign, and it attracts hunters. You know, sometimes you got to hunt where the sign's not. Or I shouldn't say that the sign's different. You have to understand how to read it coming out of bedding. And that's kind of what we teach, right? that this is something I would avoid like the plague. Every 10 feet I'm running into a soda or a beer can. Bush light. Oh look, there's a ground blind. Man, you gotta wonder how old a tree like that is. That's a maple tree. And that is probably from there to there is about 5 feet. Yeah, it's 5 feet across. That's got to be one old tree. Cut that thing down and find Indian arrowheads and the musket balls. That hardwood ridge full of hunter sign led me straight to the crops and then over to the parking lot. And that was it for that area, but I came back with the rat slayer to check a different section of that same swamp. So I'm back to the same property again, and that's that point right there in the swamp that we're looking across the water at. That's where we kind of found that really good spot where they're coming out of the point past that tree. So today we went to the other side of the water. We're going to look at some points over here, and heading back, I got James along, the rat slayer, and over here we're finding the only oak trees we've seen on the property, and there's a few of them in here. And this could be good, because if they're coming to these oaks, they could, the next point down looks like a bedding point on the map, but I've never been to it. And if they're coming up here to get into these oaks, because that's going to be bottomland with no oaks, when these are dropping, this could be really good. So we got into the bigger woods now through all that brush, and there is human sign. I found some bottles over there next to a rub tree, and now here there's a bottle, there's a bottle, there's a bottle, and they're of different age classes. That one looks like about 3 or 4 years old. It's kind of rotted out. That one's at least a couple years old, but that one's from last season. So somebody's been hunting in here on a regular basis, but this is still quite a ways from what I think is the bedding. So I don't see that as a problem. They probably are leaving a lot of sign in here when they're in here eating the acorns, and people are looking for these trees. I mean, this is typically what somebody wants to hunt. You know, they don't hunt where we go because you couldn't get a pink little saddle in one of those trees. Here you could. You have to be inventive to hunt where the bucks live, but this is the terrain that people would hunt in. So I didn't want to see hunter sign in here, but you look at these trees, you got to kind of expect it. It wasn't too difficult to get to this spot either. But we're still quite a ways back where we're going. Hopefully this stops the hunters here. Well, here's a big old white swamp oak right here. That one's got to be producing. And I could see a couple more over there. So, man, this has to be a draw. For sure. There's so much deer sign in here too, even now.
Do you think that since there's so much water, we're close to the river, that flooding could be bringing all this up?
Yeah, quite possible. Quite possible some of these bottles are getting flooded into here. Because now, you just pointed out there's a big hunk of styrofoam over there.
There's that 5-gallon bucket.
5-gallon bucket. That looks like a seat somebody brought out here to hunt off of.
Oh.
It's a nice seat. It carries your corn out too, right?
Right there.
Here's another nice big oak tree.
A bobber.
A bobber?
Right there.
Oh yeah, so obviously if there's a bobber out here, a lot of what we're perceiving as hunting pressure bottles is probably actually flooding. How deep's that water?
Pretty deep, pretty cold.
A little over your boots?
A little bit.
Yeah, we just got to make it to those trees over there. But this little waterway here will keep a lot of people out of here, hopefully.
Yeah, it's fun dragging a deer through that, huh?
Yeah, par for course. Whoa! Yeah, I'm right over my boots. Woohoo! Right off the edge, I'm over the boots. This is pretty deep. I mean, are you going to go over your balls? Because I don't want to get my wallet and stuff wet. Let's see how you do.
Oh, it's getting deeper.
Yeah, let's turn around. Now that we got soaked, let's go around the other way and take the long route. First time I put the new Arxis underwater. Now they're broken in. When Tiffany Lukoski said BBD, she meant big buck down. But for beast hunters, BBD has a little different meaning. Beast boot dump. So we're going around the water and we realize this kind of comes to a little bit of a point here, and then there's some swamp over there. There's a little open area in front of us, which I wouldn't think deer would want to go through the open area in daylight, at least not mature ones. But the biggest oaks are right here. And it seems like the sign just condensed as we got here. I mean, look at this trail. It seems like a lot of sign is coming from here. I'm sure it's still coming from the way we were looking at, but it does look like something's coming from here. But this could be pretty obvious to a hunter if he came into this woods, and it looks like there's some hunting sign here. Maybe some of it's stuff floating in, but so deer coming right through here. You know, here I got a whole bunch of alfalfa. It looks like this probably was an alfalfa field at one time when this was a farm. Come here, look at this. This tree has been set up and there's a limb cut right there. So somebody's sitting over this opening. So, good to know. Just keep moving. We'll get them where they come from. We don't have to get them right at the oaks. It's like the guy hunting over the food plot. You know, they got to have these pretty little trees they can put their pink saddles in and sit back and, you know, share on Facebook. We'll get into the thick stuff where the deer live. So let's follow this back and see where these deer are coming from. If we could get a closer spot where we could get the bigger ones in daylight, and then we'll move around and go back to where we want them to look. Here's a night bed, a pretty good size one too. See that?
Yep.
The one laid there in the night to chew his cud, probably when he's eating this alfalfa. And that's something to keep in context here too. When you're looking at what time frame deer are in here, obviously they're in here now, and obviously they'd be in here if the oaks are dropping, right? But if you look around, there's a lot of early season food. We saw stinging nettles, we saw jewelweed, we saw dogwood. There's a lot of stuff that keep deer in here pretty much year round. It's just a matter of hunting pressure and stuff keeping it at night. So this is a good attracting area, but we got to find where those deer are moving in daylight. Buckthorn here is all chewed off, chewed down. These dogwood's all chewed down. All the limbs are bitten off. Here's a tree. I don't know if that's box elder or what, but that's all munched down. All the leaves are munched off of there. Lots of browsing on this trail, and this is the trail that goes towards the oaks and towards that guy's setup. You get a little wet there?
A little bit, yeah.
So we tried getting around. We can't. No matter what you do, you got to get wet. Right now with it being flooded, the spot where we want to go is really deep. There's actually carp splashing out there. The finger point goes down there. I still think that that's a good area, but everything's going to be underwater right now, so I don't know what we're going to see. But looking at these oaks and knowing that there's a crop field right there, a clover field, I have to think that there's deer coming out of that point. Some coming towards those oaks, some going towards those crops. And just inside of that woodlot, there's going to be a main trail coming from the fingers off of that point up here. And that's where I would set up. And I think we just go in here during season and go in there and set up, just follow the sign back. I think we could mark that pretty safely, expecting that to be a good spot. I don't think there's too many people swimming back here to do this. I mean, you're gonna have to get wet no matter what time of the year it is, but right now the water is a foot or two deeper than it usually is, and we'd be up to our waists in water over there and really wouldn't be able to see much. But these oak trees, that crop field, this funnel, it all lays out. It has to be a good spot. Unless we get in there, there's a lot of pressure, but
Right.
it's worth a try.
Yeah, why not?
The rat slayer shamed me into trying to get across that water one last time.
I'm making the old man go through the water.
He's still got young spirit. We're gonna go give it a shot. It's getting pretty deep.
Yeah, watch your phone.
Don't step there. I just went to here and there's no bottom. I had to put my phone in my other pocket because that started getting wet. There's a hole right there, I'll tell you what. I have to go around this way. Well, we just went through, I don't know, about 100 yards of deep water. And that's the woodlot finger point we wanted to get through. And there's a channel there and it's deeper. So I don't want to get my phone wet or whatever. So I guess we're giving up on the bright idea of trying to make it there. But getting here was worth it because you can see how narrow this is. You can see it's a funnel. And you can see it's got cattails on that side. I didn't know there was cattails over there. So that's going to hold some good bedding back in there. You can see there's a bowl of dead ash back there. There's got to be some good stuff in there. So I'm thinking there's going to be a funnel of deer coming up this for sure. But even seeing the sign if it's underwater right now is going to be hard.
Right.
So I guess we might as well just try to swim back and look at a different spot.
All right.
You give up yet?
No, we can keep going if you want. You're already wet. Just hold the phones up. You want to go or no?
No.
The log right here. Drops right here.
That spot we were just at didn't work out. What we wanted to see was all across that water and we didn't get over there, so we went to a different spot. And this is a real small spot that I've never seen somebody hunt in, and it doesn't really look like public, but it is public. There isn't even a parking spot. We had to find a way to weasel our truck into an area so we could get over here, which I won't explain because I don't want you to figure out exactly where I'm at. But we ain't got in here, what, 20, 30 yards off the road, and there's rubs all over the place. There's a fresh one back there, there's a couple old ones here, there's old ones there. Just coming out of the cattails, and we haven't even got into anything yet. This is a good looking property. It's got a little, it's real small, real tiny, but it's got a little cattail marsh in it that you can't really see from the road, and it just looks like it's open grass. It's just got these little tangles along the sides of it, but it kind of leads into private crops on the backside. If there's something big in here, it just takes one deer, you know, having a pinpoint spot where they come out of here and cutting them off wouldn't be a bad idea. I think this could be a good spot. What do you think, James?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right, let's take a look. Fell down. So we're looking at this point of brush here. This is on that tree line where I kind of thought the deer would be behind it. And I can see a bed right away and some old rubs. So here's a bed. You can see the dead grass instead of the living grass. And you see these old rubs right in it. I'm telling you, it's a buck bed, at least occasionally. It's a good spot. The wind blowing out here, they can kind of watch this open field. I see another bed right here, and this one's fresh. In here. But I would really like to see some big fresh rubs. So far we haven't seen too much.
Everywhere. They're all over the
I think
place.
they're on every tree.
Every single one.
Look at this. They're everywhere. You look around, there's just clumps of them on every single tree. This whole patch. There's got to
That's
be
nuts.
millions of them in here.
That's nuts.
If we were making caterpillar soup. See what I see? I see a tree stand harness
Oh,
right
yeah,
right
look
there
at that.
in that tree.
Sure enough.
So we were just talking about how this should be a good funnel, and I don't see any sign. Well, that's probably why we don't see any sign right there. All right, so we got somebody sat right there. That harness looks like it's a couple years old. Doesn't look like anybody's been in there too recently, but in the last couple years. But somebody's been back here. Let's just keep looking. So we went completely through this whole woods here, and there's some old big sign, old historical rubs like this one. A bunch of them in here. In this little opening, I can see historical rubs all over the place, and a lot of it's big. But I'm not seeing anything from the last year. But we found that stand set up over there. This is only about 75 or 100 acres, and now we found this blind right here, and probably set up here when all these rubs were fresh. There's a ton of rubs in here, but this also has the only patch of oak trees here, and there's just 3 giant oaks right here, and you got this blind set up right here. So I can understand that being the spot. I would much rather be in a tree. But I think they got these deer educated and the big bucks aren't in here. I mean, a place with 75 acres can only hold like so much pressure. You put 2 guys in here hunting, and obviously 2 different guys, because there's one mindset that sits on the ground in a great tree spot, and there's the other mindset that sits in a tree where you could get in a good ground blind. So they're not the same person. So at least 2 people hunting this, and I think that they got it burned out for now. But it's a good area to keep an eye on. If you've seen something big came in here or started showing up here and those hunters are gone, you know, just a periodic check every couple of years, see if those guys are gone, if the bucks are back. I mean, they'll hunt here, and when they don't see sign, they'll eventually move on. And you come back through, the sign picks up, then you come in and pick the cherry. We're just rethinking this here once. And I'm still standing in an area with the oaks. This is literally the only area around here within probably maybe even as far as a half mile has got a patch of oaks like this. It's all residential, and the forests around here I've been in, there's no oaks. It's all real low and wet, and these are the only oaks. And it might just be that last year wasn't a good oak producing year, and that's why these rubs weren't opened. It could be that when these acorns are dropping, they live right in this marsh, because the cattails are right behind us. They're 50 yards back, and there's some good brush in there. And there's an awful lot of rubs here that are 2 years old, that are big, but none from last season. So I think if we spot checked and the acorns were dropping, opening week this would probably be worth a sit, might hold a big bug. It might be like an every other year spot, or the years that the oaks drop. So I think it's probably worth marking and checking. You know, if this is dropping acorns, it might not be a bad place to sit, because I don't really think it gets looked at a lot. Looking at that blind, it's probably a gun blind. Wouldn't you think?
Kinda, yeah.
Hard to think somebody's sitting in there with a bow.
Right.
Yeah, I think this is worth a shot. Early season, we check on it. That might be a one-time in and out thing too. I don't see a lot of sign of somebody hunting. Just that one little blind.
Right.
But there's a lot of rub activity in here, and it does not look like this produced acorns last year, and I wouldn't expect it to. The ones over in this area didn't really produce. If they produce this year, I wouldn't doubt it if a buck shows up here. There's a lot of bucks around here, on the properties around here. Yeah, I think we should mark this spot.
All right.
Thanks for coming along today. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you haven't yet, please subscribe. Some of our subscribers have been dumped by YouTube, so check to see if you're subscribed, and if you're not, subscribe again.